Hey guys, it's In. And today, after quite a few requests, we are back with another Today in Hnk Legends. And you might be wondering why on earth this one took so long. Well, if you don't care about the backstory, I'll leave a timestamp to when I start blabbering about the game. But what had happened was, I was going to wait a bit to make the next one as I wanted a few more interesting units to come out. So, I began waiting. And then more and more characters came out that I kept missing, meaning I didn't know much about them around release. Then the fact that I kept missing units started pissing me off, so I stopped taking the game as seriously, and I kind of forgot about it for a bit. My next video around that time took a bit of research, and the one after that made me have to think about base SNK again. My fucking nightmare. So LR really wasn't a big focus in my mind at that time, when compared to everything else. Eventually I get around to writing this script for this video, and then I get sick and practically lose my voice, meaning I couldn't really do anything. And when I went to try and force it, I got a headache. So a lot of feeling shitty later, we're here now and I can actually do it. So anyways, now that I'm pretty much 80% back to full health, let's yabber about a silly little game and its silly little units. Starting off with Kid Yuria, a support unit. You know, my favorite kind of unit to talk about since they do so much. Like every support unit, she helps your team. Not a super huge upgrade if you have all of Toki's channeling points unlocked, but if you don't, just like every other support except for Wheelchair Guy, she's just an upgrade for that slot. Then we get to Riaku. Now, I don't know how many Riaku fans there are, but in his heyday, I was damn near about to become one of them. Now, I missed him initially and stayed away from Dojo because, simple reason, Sega fucking hates me. Meaning originally I didn't get to see what he did. And the time he was out, I heard he was decent, so on his re-release I pulled him. And if I had to describe him shortly, I'd say he's simple but effective. His damage isn't insane, but as you've probably noticed if you've been following my channel for a while, when the damage isn't good, they usually have something to compensate, and that didn't pass Riaku. First of all, he was pretty healthy. Not the tankiest, but he could take a few good hits from some of the heavy hitters out. He also happened to have the flea effect, which helped him not get juiced from all the high damage units floating around at the time. This was helpful, but with low damage and no special stats, this wouldn't matter. But fortunately for him, he had this little effect called Ensnare, and this is where a majority of his value came from. When hitting Riaku or his team, you get this Riaku trap effect. Once you get 10 or so stacks of it, you get ensnared, which was practically sealed, as it stopped whoever was affected by it completely for one turn. You may notice I don't usually talk about stunner units or get excited for them. The main difference was he could stun multiple units on the same turn. If against the right team, he could disable all of them in one go. This was a godsend for me and I'm pretty sure many people, as around this time, practically everyone could loot. But to talk about old Haku nowadays, as always when the newer units come out, they tend to be immune to the older effects. So practically everyone coming out right now is immune to Ensnare, meaning they're immune to the main thing that made him viable. He had a good run. He was quite effective against Godslayer Rao and even Ken Ray, but now I wouldn't run him by choice. Then we have Horse Rao, which, to be honest, I don't have the most experience with. I wasn't playing a lot of Dojo at the time due to the whole Sega cucking me thing, but I can take a crack at it. Pretty tanky life type fella. Considering besides Keiji, the last important tank we got was fucking Falco, it's nice to have a sturdy-ish unit on the front line you could rely on to take damage, and one that isn't so harmful to lose if he was to go down like Godslayer Pledge Rao was. He had a debuff called Intimidate, which reduced the damage multiplier of whoever was affecting by 100%. Now this does sound crazy, but I never even noticed it when I fought teams with him, so it doesn't seem like his defining feature. He can be immune to the 7-star insta-kill effect, which at the time just meant they'd kill everyone else and then beat the shit out of him, and this effect now is especially irrelevant due to a unit we'll get to later. He has the same kind of revive system MT Rao did, where he can revive if enough of his pals are around. So on release, he seemed okay. Not for any standout insane reason like most Rao units tend to be, but just because he was sturdy against what existed at the time. Nowadays, he still kind of fills that role of decent life type, but isn't as needed due to all the options we have. He's a good tank and is kind of annoying to put down, but he's just kind of doing what you expect tanks to do. Ray and Ari. The dynamic duo of units I bet literally no one outside of Japan probably asked for. To be fair to them, they're unexpectedly good here. They're a tech type, so their health isn't great and their damage can be good, but not as good as the heavy hitters around. The main reason she's good is because she's a key charger for the rest of your team. If you like your STs, she'll help you do them more often. She's really simple but effective, as she helps out practically whatever team she's on. She even boosts Ray unit stats, which the only real relevant one is Ken Ray. You know, one of the best units recently added. Overall, she's a great unit to have. Definitely one of the best support units to drop recently. And no, I didn't mean support as in support slot, I just mean as in helping the rest of the team along. Just want to clarify that before I get the actually comment somewhere in this video. Then we get to Devour Rachi, who definitely feels like the quirky kid out of the bunch. To say some things about the general unit and not just his stats and stuff, the presentation here is great. While I think the animation on his ultimate is pretty stupid in concept, as he runs up to you and hits you one time before looking real proud of himself. And yes, I know this is a reference, and no, that doesn't make me think it's any less goofy. The expressions he makes are amazing, and I really love the last shot of this ultimate. I'd say this is around the point Sega started putting a lot more effort into how the ultimates look. While I think they've made some weird choices as to what to animate, I can't deny how good they are presentation-wise. Now, for him as a unit and how viable he is, he definitely didn't slouch in the meta. His damage was good, and putting him down was a bit of a pain in the ass due to all the other tanky units around him. And he himself is decently tanky for a dude wearing a Skyrim peasant outfit. But where he shines are his effects. First of all, having his CMP a bit progressed makes your team immune to insta-kill just by him being there. This was a solid enough reason to make him needed if you were sweating dojo. But nowadays, due to a ginormous elephant in the room that I'm trying to hold off on, isn't that amazing? What is still amazing is his inhibitor. This functionally stops the enemy team from gaining grit stacks, killing off a good chunk of their survivability. Now initially, I didn't think this would matter that much. This was until my KG, which let me remind you was one of the best tanks in the game, was absolutely destroyed by this puffy-haired shitter's effect and his team just beating my guy up. The effect is so good it even keeps him viable to this day, which is very annoying for anyone who didn't pull him. Then we get to Juke, one of the more boring units to come out, to be honest. This isn't me saying he's bad, I just don't think he's that fun to talk about. To the point where I had to go read about him for this video, as he kinda just felt like a unit that came out. Stat-wise, his health is good, but his damage is not really, like, at all. He's decent at supporting hooked or Ryukin units, which if you can tell from Shachi and then him, is going to be a little bit of a trend moving forwards. So really the only reason you see him so much in Dojo is because of that. He helps them strip grits and gives them general stat increases, so yeah. Then we get to Kaio. Kaio here does a lot. First, he has an aura effect. Luckily, Keiji's good for more than just his aura effect, so you don't need to throw him in the garbage like how you did for Falco. But Kaio's aura here is a bit quirky. First of all, it makes his entire team immune to instant death. If you wondered why I was weird praising the units who gave that effect or were simply immune to it by themselves, this is why. He has a get out of jail free card for everyone, including himself. This doesn't fully snub Ken and Ray, but it does cut a good bit of the viability you'd run them for. And God forbid your enemy team has Kaio and you don't. Your team will start dropping like flies while theirs is practically chilling on the beach. But this wasn't enough, as we had to take a bonus step. His aura stays active even after his death. This probably sets a new precedent for future aura units, but considering he nullifies the instant death effect a lot of us just got our hands on with his fiery domain expansion, I'm sure you can see why this is annoying. Thinking you can get back your main damaging effect just to get blocked by a unit you just defeated. Then let's talk about him outside of that. He's really healthy and can do really high damage, can somewhat hit your entire team, and can loot. Have we been here before? All this feels really familiar, and I'm not sure why. Kinda reminds me of some funk-ass character I despised, who made some kind of, I don't know, pledge to his homeland? Oh, wait a minute! If it wasn't obvious, this Kaio is practically an updated Rao. So make Homeland Pledge Rao good for this meta and you'd have Kaio. Frankly, there isn't that much else to say about him. He's practically the mandatory unit to have on your team if you want to win like Rao was. I think the units around him nowadays are even better than the units around Rao at his peak. So you might lose even faster now. To get onto how his ST looks, he has two of them. Very cool detail and both are animated really well. But just like before, we made a really weird choice with this one. The fist rush one looks okay and starts fine. My problem is when he hits this little slay queen ass pose in between. Again, I get it's a reference to the base show, but that doesn't make it any less goofy seeing it animated. I was so surprised the first time I saw it, I genuinely started laughing when it came out of nowhere as I forgot the scene it was referencing. His second ST where he hits an elbow drop looks really good, but it takes really long to get to the point. It kind of felt like I stopped playing LR and I cut on the end bit of the Asura arc. Yo, so you remember how I just said Kaio is Pledge Rao 2.0? Hyo is Rin 2.0. It's kind of hard to say anything unique about him because he's just her, but better. AoEs, loops sometimes. He literally has everything she did, just upscaled for this meta. A solid pick for your team because he's just her, again. Then we get the Blind Churro, who's a very solid, very tanky, very damaging life type. He's from a ranked gacha, so what did you expect, honestly? It's hard to go super in depth with him because it'd most likely be me spewing random effect names at you to get to the same point of he's really healthy and damaging. Now, I don't think he excels at either of those categories as much as funk-ass Kaio does, but some of his other effects still help him be one of the top units at this time. Most interestingly, he brought back Delayed Revive, an effect I'm sure most of you forgot about. In this meta where everyone has 50 or so stacks of multi-revive and a bunch of other goofy-ass effects, it's nice to keep some units down for a bit longer so your guys can take out the rest. Overall, good guy. Pull him if you can. Then we get to meet. You remember when I said I'd take a crack at it for Juke and Horse Rao? Kind of the same situation here. He seems alright, nothing meta-defining. He has Crushing Grief, which if we learned anything from Souther and Ogai can be a bit of a pain in the ass when it comes to spreading effects, but I don't know what else he does that makes him special other than that. He doesn't seem horrible or anything and could be a fairly decent replacement unit if you have some older fellas on your team still, but he doesn't seem like a game changer either. And on our final step, we have the Souther that just released. At the time of writing this, it's been a day or so since he's come out, so we don't have a ton of experience with him, but from what I've seen so far, he's going to be a problem. I'm not going to bore you with his Bible-length description, but when I was reading it at first, I actually didn't check what type he was. So going off of what I was reading alone, I thought he was a life type, as he has multiple effects to boost health and keep him around. Recovery tools, multi-revive, the whole shebang. Hell, they even gave him a unique effect that works like Grit, but isn't named Grit, meaning all the Grit training or limiting effects that work on literally every other unit out in the game right now don't affect his survivability at all. So imagine my surprise when a dude with all this shit is a power type, which means on top of all the healthy shit he has a bunch of effects to help boost his damage. Like being able to loop his ST 3 times alone, which I can already imagine is going to be really annoying. But seeing as I'm sick at the time of writing this video, and this will probably come out a week or two after his release, I'm sure all of you will have suffered him a bit to have more context of his capabilities than I do right now. And unfortunately for those who don't pull him, I feel he's going to be a mainstay in the meta for at least a while. But anyways, that's been everyone released up until now. And probably the longest today in HNK that'll happen for a while. Glad to finally be all caught up. But I've blabbed long enough. What do you guys think about the current meta and its units? As always, I'm glad to discuss with you guys in the comments, and I've been Ed, and I am out.